here this morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming back for day 2 of our Advocacy and Policy Conference. We really appreciate you spending a Saturday morning and part of your afternoon with us today. I want to take a few moments before we get started and get into our faculty awards and then our incredible keynote speaker that we have with us today. I want to take a few moments to thank our FAC staff once again for all the incredible work putting this event together. I know our president, Debbie Klein, did a shout out yesterday one by one, but I really want to thank them all myself. I feel so grateful to be able to work with an incredible group of people. We're a very small staff, but we are mighty, and I really want to thank them for all of their work. I also want to thank all the faculty leaders who have been a part of making this event possible. As you've seen, many folks step up and lead sessions, but also many faculty leaders did a lot of work behind the scenes. I want to thank our president-elect, Webby Bro-Wynkoop, who chaired our A&P Planning Committee. I want to thank everyone who was on the A&P Planning Committee for all the work here. I want to thank our president, Debbie Klein, for incredible leadership with this event, and all of the other faculty leaders that participated. Thank you so much for being part of this event and making it so incredible. I would also like to thank the Student Senate for California Community Colleges for their partnership. We were so fortunate to have a partnership with them this year where they funded many students to come, almost all our students to come and be part of this conference. We had 120 students register, which is just phenomenal. And their presence, their perspectives, their experience are so critical to our conversations around advocacy and policy. So we're so grateful that we have that partnership with that organization. So thank you so much for that partnership. A couple other things before we move forward. We are going to be doing a lobby training later this afternoon, or an advocacy training. Obviously, these are different times. We won't be going into the Capitol like we normally were, but we do hope to help facilitate a way for folks to be able to do virtual lobby visits through Zoom over the coming weeks. So we have an advocacy toolkit that can help guide that conversation and help make it really easy for you to schedule meetings with your legislators, have talking points for the issue areas. So please take a look at that when you get a chance. And additionally, we'll be talking more about that next week during our week of action as well. And then finally, I would like to share that our Fac Board Elections, our nomination process actually concludes today. So if any of you are interested in being a member of our board that really sets the the tone and sets the strategy for how this organization and the direction that it goes, please consider running for the board. I think in the chat we'll have a link that can give you some more information about that. So with that, couple things to kind of get us started here. I'm really excited to move us over to our next agenda item, which is honoring some of our incredible faculty leaders who have done just incredible work this year. And I feel really privileged and honored to be able to do this. So we have 3 awards that we're going to go through here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about them, and I'm going to introduce some of our incredible faculty that are here with us today, and then share the floor with them to allow them to share a little bit about some of the incredible work they're doing and take a few moments. So first, I will start with our Faculty of the Year Award. We're so honored to be able to give this award to Vicky Austin, who's a faculty leader and a part-time faculty representative for her union at Los Positas College. She's been critical at her college and within her district to the advocacy and planning of a multi-million-dollar faculty professional development program, which educates 90% of faculty on the best remote learning practices. And of course, this is critical during this time of year, this time that we are in right now with COVID, and her leadership there was so instrumental for assisting faculty throughout her district. So we are super excited to be able to award Vicky Austin with the Faculty of the Year Award. Congratulations, Vicky.
Thank you very much. And thank you for this beautiful award that you provided to me to commemorate this occasion. What I've done this past extraordinary year that we're all living through is only possible because of the community of people that I work with at my college. We have a fabulous distance ed coordinator and instructional designer. We have a great team on the board of the faculty union and negotiators. The faculty that I work with are the most creative and energetic people that really stepped up as they were challenged by this year. And their work, along with the counselors and the librarians and the classified staff, really contributed to a pretty good year for our students. And the last thing I'd like to say is, I think we're all doing amazing work this year, but I've been fortunate enough to have a champion in Sarah Thompson, our academic senate president, who put forth my nomination. And we should all have someone like Sarah in our corner. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicky, and congratulations again. Thank you so much for being here today. Our next award is the Emancipation Through Education Award. This is an award that comes to us from our People of Color Committee, and it is focused around those who have championed and have really embodied our work as an organization around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And specifically this year, this award is about an individual faculty member who's done incredible work with incarcerated students. And this is something that our organization has worked really hard on within the advocacy space. And we really are proud to be able to honor a faculty member who has been a leader in the Los Rios district in this work. So with that, please join me in congratulating Jasmine Williams on this award.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Yeah, these are beautiful. As Vicky was saying, these are really, really nice. I opened it and I was like, oh my goodness, it's glass. No. But, you know, especially as an African-American woman, when I think about the word emancipation, right? We know that the actual emancipation in 1863 wasn't the end all be all at all. We often talk about Juneteenth and how that's the real Independence Day and all of that. So it wasn't the end all be all, but it started the conversation. It started the process. It started the productivity in that. And just like that, education is such a start in rehabilitating our incarcerated individuals. So I really do believe in that. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to educate behind the wall. The students there are just like our students outside the wall. They really want to learn. They love discussion, and I really enjoy. I know in the last year we haven't been able to go behind the wall. We haven't been able to go in, but even by correspondence, you still get the same thing, and it really invigorates my teaching practice. It really does. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. I thank the FACCC and Folsom Lake College, to Kalinda and Mariko, my family, to God, you know, all of that. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to do this. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Thank you for all of your work once again. We're so privileged to be able to honor you, and thanks for being with us today. Our next award is the Jonathan Lightman Factivist Award, named after my predecessor and longtime executive director, Jonathan Lightman. This award is for a demonstrated commitment to advancing FACC's agenda, going above and beyond, the call of duty. And this award goes to a union leader in the Los Angeles area, a legislative and people of color committee member, an expert advocate that I've seen on so many levels, whether it's in Sacramento and the Los Angeles area, really the true spirit of being an advocate when it comes to this policy work that we do. So I'm really excited to announce this award for Ruby Christian-Brougham and from Los Angeles Valley College. Ruby, congratulations.
So here's the award. It is beautiful, as everyone has said, and thank you so much. I have to say that I'm humbled and I'm honored to receive anything that has Jonathan Lightman's name on it. A little intimidated as well. This year has been an incredible year for us. We've done a tremendous amount of work on our Board of Trustee election. We've done a tremendous amount of work just in collective bargaining. We've done a tremendous amount of work in terms of legislation. I have to say that for me in particular, that Madalina Montero and John McDowell brought me into the space. And I wouldn't be in the space if it wasn't for them, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. They have been my mentors and so important. They've supported me in every step of this journey. This journey often has been tough. I tend to be a little bit outspoken and I tend to be a little bit bold. So it tends to be a tough journey. I've considered it an honor to be able to participate and learn so much in this space in terms of legislation and advocacy, as well as being part of the new Black, Indigenous, People of Color group here. I'm also really proud to be a part of this organization. I'm really proud to see that we've prioritized inclusion and diversity, and we've made a clear statement of our commitment in our newly revised mission, value, and vision statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. Congratulations. Can we get one more virtual round of applause for all of our incredible faculty winners this year? Thank you all so much for your incredible work. Thank you. So next, I have the pleasure of introducing Madalina Montero, who will introduce our keynote.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Factivists. It's an honor. Okay, we are honored to have with us Dr. Melina Abdullah. Dr. Abdullah is a recognized expert on race, gender, class, and social movements. She was among the original group of organizers that convened to form the Black Lives Matter and continues to serve as the Los Angeles chapter leader. Professor Abdullah is a humanist, a scholar, activist, understanding the role that she plays in the academia as an intrinsically linked to the broader struggles for the liberation of oppressed people. Dr. Melina Abdullah is a leader in the fight of ethnic studies in the K-12 and university system, and was a part of the historical victory that made ethnic studies a requirement in the Los Angeles Unified School District. Also serving on the task force for the advancement of ethnic studies for the California State University system. Please help me welcome Dr. Melina Abdullah.
Greetings, everybody. I'm grateful to be here. And just before I start with what will hopefully be brief but important remarks, I wanted to just begin with a land, labor, and life acknowledgement. So I hope that you all will join me in this. And maybe we can begin by taking a deep breath in. Can you all hear me? You can hear me, right? Okay. Let's take a deep breath in and hold it for 3 seconds and breathe out. The land on which we inhabit is physically situated in the original ancestral homelands. In Los Angeles, we are on the land of the Tongva and Chumash people. We pay respect to the Tongva, Chumash, and all indigenous people, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in the homeland and throughout their historic diaspora. And let's take another deep breath in, 3 seconds in. Hold it. And breathe out. We pay homage to those who were stolen from Africa, placed in bondage, falsely named as chattel, and forced into labor, who were called slaves but never submitted as such, who've always been fully human with an unbroken connection to the divine and to each other. We honor our African ancestors for the still unpaid labor which built what is now the Americas. Breathe in. Hold for 3. And breathe out. To both our indigenous and African forebears, we commit to the continued struggle for liberation and reparations, for it is only through freedom and justice that we truly give honor. Aho Ashe. So again, my name is Melina Abdullah, and I'd also like us to ground ourselves in the memory and in honor of Breonna Taylor, whose life was stolen 1 year ago today as she slept in her bed We declare that Black women have the right to live and to breathe and to laugh and to sleep. And so we honor Breonna Taylor, especially today, and ask that her spirit guide us in the struggle for justice. And we say her name. If you can join with me in saying her name wherever you are, say her name, Breonna Taylor. Say her name, Breonna Taylor. Say her name, Breonna Taylor. Ashe.
Ashe.
So again, thank you for having me. My work as an educator, it's really special for me to be here because my work as an educator began as a community college instructor at West LA College. And it was some of the most important work that I've done. I really appreciated the way in which I was able to access students who didn't necessarily see themselves as ones who would be in a university system, but began to kind of deepen their intellectual tools in community colleges and awaken themselves to the idea that intellectualism doesn't mean confining yourself to an ivory tower. It means to be able to steal back time from a system of white supremacist, patriarchal, heteronormative capitalism that tries to consume us, especially as working class people and people of color, with kind of this constancy of work, right? And so community colleges offer a space where we say we have the right to also develop intellectual tools which are necessary as we struggle forward for freedom. And I think that in no time more than now, is that a truism, right? So in this Black Lives Matter movement moment, we absolutely have to use this space in community colleges, use the platform that we've been given as educators to remind folks that the system of education doesn't have to belong with the architects of these institutions. Community colleges especially are uniquely positioned to belong to the people and provide a space for us to really talk about and think about and behave in ways that intentionally seek to rebuild the world in which we live, to reimagine the world in which we live. And so I think about the history of community colleges. I think about the role of colleges like Merritt College as being really the birthplace of the Black Panther Party. It was where Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seale sat at a lunch table and kind of sketched out on a napkin what Black power should look like, how we move from civil rights to Black power. And then I think about what it means where the California community colleges are the system under which the majority and plurality of Black students in higher education find their home. So I'm really honored and fortunate and very excited to be with you, even if it's just for a few moments this morning. So what I wanted to talk a bit about is institutional racism, this movement moment, and what it means to be an abolitionist during this time and place. And I want to encourage you to take on a spirit and positioning of abolitionism. And so I want to talk quickly about what institutional racism means, how it kind of pervades the mainstream, and then how we push back against it and how we still take advantage of this movement moment. So up until very recently, I've been saying that this is a moment when the world has cracked wide open. And I want to submit that the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, the murder of George Floyd, the murder of Breonna Taylor, in the midst of an unprecedented global health pandemic with an economic fallout that's simply unmatched and has a disproportionate impact on Black people in particular, has cracked the world wide open. And I liken it to, I don't watch very much television, but I have fallen in love with a television show called Lovecraft Country, and my kids always get on me for talking too much about this television series. But if you have HBO and you are not watching Lovecraft Country, please catch up on it. It reminds me of an Octavia Butler novel. So it's this mix of historicism and Black futurism, and it's really a representation, I believe, of this moment. So in the physical, it's set in 1955 Chicago. The cast is primarily Black. It surrounds this kind of questioning. I guess at the core of it is this questioning of what does Black freedom look like? And I think it mirrors this moment where we're saying, what does Black freedom look like? And I think that this Black Lives Matter moment has challenged all of us, whether we're Black or not, to say, what does Black freedom look like, right? Because we've come to understand that even though we've been saying Black Lives Matter for the last 7.5 years, it wasn't until the theft of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery's life that we understood why we were saying Black Lives Matter and how it's necessary to make Black Lives Matter in order for anybody else's life to matter, right? And so we're in this moment when this world has cracked wide open. And in Lovecraft Country, the world literally cracks wide open as they kind of contemplate how to save Black futures. I think similarly, we are contemplating how do we save Black futures, right? So 1955 Chicago and Lovecraft Country, they're faced with the murder of Emmett Till at the hands of white supremacy. 2021, 2020, we're thinking about, in California, we're thinking about not only how do we make meaning out of the theft of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor, but also how do we make meaning out of the theft of Dijon Kizzie's life and Frederick Williams' life and so many others who've been killed here in California by white supremacy and the state, right? And so what I think in both instances, in the example of Lovecraft Country, but also the example that we're faced with, I think that what we're recognizing is that racism is absolutely baked into the structure and foundation of this country, right? That systems are deliberately and intentionally designed to produce these outcomes. As much as we'd like to say it was accidental that George Floyd was murdered, as we move into the trial of Derek Chauvin, the officer who decided for 8 minutes and 46 seconds to put his knee into the neck of this Black father and son and brother, that it was a decision. It was a constant decision. And I think that's why it hit us in our spirit that we saw the ancestral truism of what policing in this country is. That policing in this country, and any of you who teach criminal justice, any of you who teach ethnic studies know that I'm not making this up. You all have read books like The Future of Policing. You all have read Angela Davis's work. You all understand that policing comes from slave catching. And just as ridiculous as it would be to say, let's just reform chattel slavery, we don't need to upend it. That's the same ridiculousness with which we must meet those who say we need to reform policing. You cannot reform a vestige of chattel slavery. It has to be upended. Because for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, Derek Chauvin chose to steal the life of George Floyd. But before him, we need to remember that, we are at the anniversary of the beating of Rodney King. All of those LAPD officers chose to savagely beat Rodney King, right? We need to remember that throughout this country, and especially in the state of California, that those BART officers on that platform chose to steal the life of Oscar Grant, right? That these were choices because the system was intentionally and deliberately designed to steal Black life, right? But it's not just the system of policing, right? Racism is baked into the fabric of the Americas. This country was built on the stolen land of Indigenous people and the stolen lives and labor of African people, right? And so it exists at virtually every single level. And we know that racism can be both overt and covert. It can be individual and institutional. And I want to talk about institutional and structural racism, but not to absolve people of responsibility. It is individuals who perpetuate these systems, right? And I also want to be very clear that many of us have read books like Ibram Kendi's newest book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, where he talks about the need for all of us to adopt an anti-racist positioning. But we also have to remember that the particular way in which racism exists in this country and around the world is through white supremacy. So there's no such thing as reverse racism, that racism belongs to whiteness. There is a racial hierarchy. Sociologists, you know exactly what I mean. And so it's really important that we understand that. So when he challenges all of us to be anti-racist, that's a challenge particularly for white folks, but also for all folks to undo the white supremacy that is within each of us. And so, you know, we need to think about the ways in which institutional and individual white supremacy can sometimes become internalized. And so those are the things that I want to challenge us to do. We can think about the recent example of how it also exists, particularly in the form of anti-Blackness, because it's Black people who stand at the bottom of virtually every single social, political, and economic measure. And it doesn't even escape us when we are the most privileged of Black folks. Some of you watched the interview. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I've heard through the grapevine about Meghan Markle and kind of what she faced as one of the most privileged Black folks on this earth, right? And her experiences with anti-Blackness. So I want to challenge us to think about our role in institutions and systems. I also want us to be challenged to think about the particular form of white supremacy and how it hits Black folks the hardest, and challenge all of us to beat back anti-Blackness in particular. So what does institutional racism look like in the US? Again, it pervades every single system. We can think about the healthcare system, the higher rates of everything from cancer to high blood pressure to mother and infant mortality. We're living in this coronavirus moment where COVID is hitting Black folks at 3 times the rate. So we have 3 times the rate of disease, 5 times the rate of hospitalization, and twice the rate of death of everyone else. We can think about systems like the criminal legal system, where Black folks constitute 40% of the prison population, but just 12.4% of the general population, where we're less likely to use illicit drugs. So let's push back against that false narrative, right? But we are more likely to be incarcerated for it. We're incarcerated for it at 3 times our population share. Some of you all have seen the recent data about how we're set up for it. So it's not just the policies and practices of the 1990s that created this kind of unjust system of incarceration, but it's also things like what's happening in South Central Los Angeles and how LAPD is pulling Black folks over at 5 times our population share, searching us at 3 times the rate of everyone else, and then falsely and illegally and unjustly putting us on gang databases, which then grow our time in prison, right? We can think about disparities like wealth and income, where white folks are 8 to 10 times as wealthy as Black folks, according to the Brookings Institution. And Black people are twice as likely to be unemployed, and likely even more than that under the current economic fallout from COVID-19, and especially with us being, you know, kind of falling off of the unemployment rolls and underemployment not being as measured. Housing in Los Angeles, Black people, 1 in 22 Black people are unhoused. Think about that number. 1 in 22 Black people are unhoused, as opposed to 1 in 272 overall, right? In terms of the environment, Black people are more likely to live near pollution sites and breathe polluted air. Black children are twice as likely to have asthma and 10 times more likely to die from it. Police kill Black people at 3 times the rate of everyone else. And then Black businesses are shuttering. 41% of Black businesses have permanently closed in the midst of this health pandemic. Finally, when we get to our space of this earth and society and the institutions in which we live, when we think about education, Black people are being pushed out of education like no other group. And we can think about everything from the K through 12 system, where Black boys are suspended at 6.2 times the rate of white boys, where Black girls are the most criminalized and most pushed out. I want us to make sure that if we teach things like education, we're teaching the work of Luke Wood and Tyrone Howard, and especially Monique Morris, because oftentimes we look at what's happening to our Black boys, but are not quite given what's happening to our Black girls the same scrutiny. And I know I'm running short on time, but I do want to just lift up that it goes beyond the stats, right? It goes beyond the stats. So this is the way in which the system teaches us to be researchers and educators, but as those who seek to disrupt these institutions, we also have to value who our youth are, who our students are, and the space in which we occupy in our classrooms is kind of sacred space, and give space beyond numbers, give space for narrative and lived experiences. So when we talk about systems being intentionally and deliberately designed to produce these outcomes, I want us to remember that when we talk about healthcare, we have to talk about the lived experiences of our people. We have to remember that 1 in 5 Black folks know someone who is close to them who has died of COVID, right? I want us to call the name of people like Dr. Susan Moore, who in December of 2020 warned us as she laid in the hospital bed, an MD who the system refused to listen to. She said on her Facebook, "This is how Black people get killed." And then they did, they killed her. The system killed her on December 20th of that year, right? Of last year. I want us to think about the criminal legal system and how it stole the youth of people like Dr. Yusuf Salaam, who is now part of what we know to be the exonerated 5, but at age 15 was considered one of the Central Park 5, set up with 4 other Black boys and sent to prison as a child, had his youth stolen, and it was only by the grace of the Creator and some level of consciousness of the actual perpetrator of that horrific crime that these boys who became men in prison were finally released and exonerated, right? I want us to think about what it means that Mumia Abu Jamal was absolutely set up for the murder of a police officer and continues to suffer in a Pennsylvania prison, has caught COVID and may die behind bars, right? I also want us to think about what it means when people are killed by police. Recently, I've been in conversation with a sister named Kanisha Kennard, whose son Devarion was killed by police in Fontana, California. He was accused of robbing someone, not at gunpoint, just robbing them, stealing from them. And sometimes 20-something-year-old people, young men, become misdirected. But I want us to think about the words of people like Brian Stevenson, that we are more than the worst thing that we've ever done. And so as Devarion ran from police and tried to find shelter behind a porta potty, the police didn't wait for this young Black man to come out, because he would have had to eventually. Instead, they shot him dead and stole the life of Kanisha Kennard's son. I want us to think about what these educational practices mean for not just, people whose names we know and don't know, but for our own children. And I'm gonna speak the name of my own middle daughter, Amara, who in the 6th grade as an 11-year-old, she's now 14, was sitting in her classroom. It was supposed to be the class that she found space and joy in, her choir class, right? 11-year-old girl first had the police called on her because her teacher said she had a look in her eye. From there, he decided he would do that regularly, called the police on her a second time for having slime in her pocket, and then continued to call the police until he called the police 8 times in a single semester on this 11-year-old girl. This is how girls are pushed out of our educational systems. Black girls are pushed out of our educational system. And I want to leave us with the words of my daughter, Amara, who makes me tremendously proud as she struggles to transform the K-12 system. On Thursday, she was part of a panel and she recounted her experiences. And she said, they make it seem normal that police are in our schools, that they pull us out of classes, that they search our bags and our bodies, that they spray kids with pepper spray, but it's not normal. I want to encourage us to remember that none of this is normal and to develop into abolitionists who say that police don't belong on our campuses, that our classrooms should be sacred spaces. I want to encourage us to upend unjust systems and to reimagine and build new ones. To think about how we work with our K-12 partners and build community schools, how we make higher education accessible to everyone, how we embed ethnic studies in everything that we do, every classroom that we occupy, how we make sure that we ground ourselves in community work, how we make a practice of restorative and transformative justice, how we build community-based public safety systems, how we reject the notion of so-called objectivity, which simply provides a platform for white supremacist, patriarchal, heteronormative capitalism, and how we decidedly take a position of being racial justice warriors who explicitly move from a position of unapologetic Blackness and Black solidarity. How we use our virtual and actual presence to support Black freedom struggle, and how we share our college resources with the movements that we must also be a part of. And I know we have just a few moments. I think we have 10 minutes for conversation, but I want to encourage us to converse and also contemplate how we use this moment when the world is still open to create, reimagine, and build new systems. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdullah. Please, a round of applause for our incredible keynote speaker. Thank you so much. So we have a few questions here. I got a couple in the chat. I got one from one of our student leaders here with us today. And their question is, and I'll read it from the chat, how can Black students overcome our overwhelming history?
How can Black students overcome our overwhelming history? Is that the question?
That's the question in the chat, yep.
So I would encourage us to really kind of think about that frame, because I think that we're often taught that we must overcome history. I want us to be informed by our history. I want us to remember that with every oppression, there's also been struggle that has always been victorious as long as we engage it. So I want us to remember that as Black people, we come from somewhere. We come from the continent of Africa, and that we have defeated every boot on our neck, right? We have overcome colonialism on the continent and chattel slavery here. We have overcome the first system, the first practice of lynching. We have ushered in civil rights and Black power. We were the visionaries behind womanism and Black feminism. And so I want us to adopt a principle that we can call Sankofa, that it's a West African tradition of Sankofa. And many of you have seen the symbol of a Sankofa bird whose feet are facing forward, but head is craned completely backwards, and it has an egg in its mouth. And the concept of Sankofa is that in order to move forward, we have to look back and embrace and empower those lessons of the past. So what can we learn from people like Hatshepsut? What can we learn from people like David Walker? What can we learn from Mama Ida B. Wells? What can we learn from Huey P. Newton? And how do we use it to reimagine Black futures and struggle for freedom for our people? So I would say that what we embrace from the past is that tradition of unrelenting struggle. And so let's not be duped into believing that, you know, it's the oppression that wins. It's the struggle that wins as long as we're willing to engage in it. So the last thing that I'll say in response is let's figure out where each of us stand in this moment of struggle, right? What is your contribution to this struggle? What is your contribution to getting our people freer than we are now? Because all of us have a part to play and have a sacred duty to struggle.
Thank you so much. Our next question comes from one of our faculty award winners, Jasmine Williams, who asks, can you talk about the adjunct professors or new teachers who are Black? How do we move within the fabric of our institutions and still be warriors of our people?
So, congratulations. It sounds like from your award that you're already doing it. So I'm encouraged by the example that you are. So congratulations. I would say that one of the things that they try to do is dupe us into believing that our allegiance has to be to the system, to this institution. Our allegiance is always to our people. So we have to ask not only who we are, but whose we are. So as the system tells you, you need to do things a particular way, as the system tries to tell you that the classroom space belongs to them, we need to remember that we're not just a faculty, we are a unionized faculty, right? With certain protections and certain privileges that we need to embrace, right? We have an opportunity to use our classroom space to really be spaces of liberation. So I would encourage you to make sure that you are grounded with, you remember as you enter classroom space and they try to lure you into trying to find a comfortable place in oppression, that we say, you know, no, I belong to my people, and in this classroom space, I'm going to use it as a place of really liberation and freedom struggle. And when you get tired, you know, find your folks who you belong to make sure that we commiserate, but also restore each other so that we can continue to move forward and struggle for freedom in that place, that space.
Thank you. So we have a hand raised by one of our board members, Christina. Christina, go for it.
Thank you so much for your talk. And I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge what your own daughter went through. And I'm sorry that she went through that, and she shouldn't. I'm sorry, my daughter's 10, so this hits so close to home. And one of the things that, as you were sharing that, I wondered, what if my daughter was in that class with your daughter? Mm. And what would she do? And I realized that, like, it's not enough for me to, you know, integrate, you know, these concepts into my classroom or be knowledgeable for myself, but make sure that I inform my daughter and teach her how to stand up when she sees injustice in her own classroom, even at 10 years old, because your daughter at 11 should not have the police called on her. And I just wanted to connect that back to that first question that was asked, that sense of overwhelming history. I need to be mindful of how I talk about Black history and not just frame it from the the troubles that were thrown on to the African people who were enslaved, right? Like there's so much more to that history, and make sure that, it's not just the problems, but also the accomplishments and the things that have been done and are being done. So thank you. And from one mom to another.
So Christina, I just want to thank you for that connection, and I want to thank you for that embrace and for your tears. I think that when we talk about our children, you're right, that we have to teach them. My generation, my mother and my mother's generation, we were taught how to kind of endure an unjust system. We were taught, what to do if you're pulled over by the police, about keeping your hands on the wheel, about being respectful. We've been taught to, turn down the rap music, right? Or to pull our pants up. And what we've learned is that did not save the life of Mike Brown. It didn't save the life of my cousin, Andrew Joseph, right? It didn't save the lives. It doesn't save the lives of our people. Breonna Taylor was just sleeping, right? And so the way in which we save the lives of our children is we teach them how to struggle, and we engage in the work constantly to transform the system, because it's not us that needs to be transformed, it's the system that needs to be transformed. So I appreciate you. I can't see your face, but I'm assuming from your words that you're a non-Black mother, right? I appreciate you for being willing to raise your children in a way that is willing to stand alongside my daughter. And I think I'm grateful that my children have also embraced their role in engaging in the struggle. I think that they found tremendous power in it. Being able to say, I don't have to submit to these systems. I can fight against them.
Thank you. Madalina, I see your hand up.
Yes, hi, it's me again. I know that you spoke about it, but to me, I think that a lot of people have a misconception of what Black Lives Matter. What exactly is the meaning of it? I know you hinted, but I want people to listen to you, because I remember when you came to East Los Angeles College, and I had a faculty that sat down with me and said, oh my God, I was so wrong about the definition, when Dr. Abdullah told us exactly why this word, and I finally understood, because when people go, oh, blue lives matter, white lives matter, and I don't think, we're not saying that, but I think a lot of people do not exactly understand the meaning of Black Lives Matter, if you could explain. And I do have Sankofa earrings.
Oh, wow, that's perfect. So Black Lives Matter, and we don't have a whole lot of time, but I will say very simply that Black Lives Matter is based on the premise of almost what we just talked about, right? That Black people are intentionally targeted for demise. The state is set up in such a way that targets Black people for demise. And we have a right and a sacred duty to transform this system. We have a right and a sacred duty to say, when we kind of ticked off those statistics, but also talked about the real lived experiences of our people, that we have a right to transform the system and say that, we have a right to particular things, right? Somebody yesterday asked me if we were socialists, right? Well, what do you say when people say Black Lives Matter is socialists? I said, well, Black Lives Matter believes that all children, beginning with Black children, right? Where 50% of Black children live in poverty, and that's not taking into consideration the current numbers as a result of what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic fallout, right? Half of Black children live in poverty, right? We believe Black children have a right to clean and healthy food, right? We believe that Black children, Black people, Black families have a right to housing. We believe that Black people have a right to live in a clean environment, and the people of Jackson, Mississippi and Flint, Michigan shouldn't be drinking contaminated water, right? We believe in that. And so what Black Lives Matter is about building a system where we have all of those things. And that means fighting back against a state that means fighting back against a state that puts a target on our backs, right? But that also means fighting for what it is we want. So that's abolition, right? Abolitionism means upending unjust systems. We are going to end the system of policing that puts targets on our backs, but we're also going to usher in community-driven approaches to public safety. Everybody wants to live in safety. Just that no Black person on the face of this earth that I've ever met feels safer when we pull up behind us in traffic. We feel safer when our communities are close-knit, when we have the love and support of our neighbors. And so Black Lives Matter is about both upending unjust systems, beginning with policing and the criminal legal system, but also building new systems.
Well, thank you so much. We are at time right now. I just want to thank you again for being with us. We're so grateful to have had your time and had your words today. So please, one more round of applause for Dr. Abdullah. Thank you so much for being here. We are going to take your words and for the rest of the conference and the rest of our time as faculty, turn them into action. So thank you so much for your inspiration. I want to give the microphone back over to Madalina now, but thank you so much.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate